Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome you to our virtual field trip. My name is Tony Hoskins. I'm the board chair at Washington's National Park Fund, and I'll be your host today. Before we start, a few housekeeping items. This virtual field trip is about 45 minutes, and just to kind of give you a lay of the land at how that will shake out. We'll start with a conversation with our special guest today, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So feel free to enter any questions in the box as we go. We have closed captioning enabled, which you can access at the bottom of the screen. And certainly welcome any feedback as we work to make these trips as accessible as possible and successful as possible. So love your feedback, love the open channel. For any of you new to Washington's National Park Fund, also known as WNPF, we are the official philanthropic partner for Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks. We have the honor to work closely with these parks and their park leadership as we work to fund over 30 priority projects each year, which fall into four core areas: advancing science and research, improving visitors' experiences, expanding volunteerism and stewardship, and embracing inclusion. Today is the first virtual field trip of 2025, and we wanted to kick off the series by introducing you to Steve Dubiel, WNPF's recently appointed Chief Executive Officer. Steve has been with us for just over 3 months, and he's diving deep into the work that we do with and for the parks. So Steve, welcome. We ready to dig in?
Absolutely. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Awesome. Well, let's start kind of at the obvious place. Just for those who haven't heard yet, Steve, can you tell us a bit about your background and how you came to join WNPF as CEO?
Absolutely. So I think I'll talk a little bit about work, but also life, because I think those two journeys are really interconnected for me. So I grew
Mhm.
up in a small town in New York, surrounded by nature. So I had a large outcropping in our yard, a big hemlock tree that I used to climb when I was out of school, and really had dreams of exploring the mountains of the West since I was a kid. And that experience came in high school. So I had the opportunity to join a youth conservation corps in the North Cascades National Park. I
Wow.
actually spent about 4 weeks right by this photo, actually on the backside of the ridge, and would hike up each afternoon after doing trail work for 6 or 8 hours during the day. We'd run about
Mhm.
800 vertical feet up over the ridge and down to Thornton Lake. Um, it's actually Thornton Lake, so there are a couple of other lakes hidden as you go up to Mount Triumph in the background. And was just one of the things I think that astounded me was that that lake was about 90% or more frozen the entire month I was up there in July. And so we would
Mhm.
spend our afternoons kind of covered in black flies, doing trail work, sweating, and then run over the ridge and go swimming in that lake when it was about 90% frozen. So that swim was really probably about 30 seconds jumping into freezing water and getting out as fast as we could. But that experience really had a huge impact for me. I think just it inspired me, um, just helped me to fall in love with the mountains, helped me to and inspired me to dedicate my career to conservation. Actually, I was at an inflection point in my 20s and I went to business school. And it took until day 2 of business school to clarify that I wanted to stay in the nonprofit world. Um, and so that really where I spent most of my career was a nonprofit called Earth Corps, a Seattle based young adult conservation corps, trying to provide similar experiences to the ones that I had. And, fast forward a bunch of years, and here I am at Washington's National Park Fund. And I actually saw the position posted last June, and it just felt like such an amazing opportunity to come full circle in life from a high school kid, spending a summer awed by the North Cascades, and really coming back, in my career to support our 3 national parks, 3 places that I love. So just thrilled to be here, thrilled to meet an amazing staff and board, generous donors, and of course, the superintendents and staff at all of our national parks who we support.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Steve. Thank you for that. I love that Thornton Lake story. Every time I hear it, it's awesome and a beautiful, beautiful place. Let's shift. Just quick first reminder to everyone again, just to sort of as questions are formulating or as you're thinking of something, something that Steve has mentioned, feel free to kind of put those in the question area and keep those handy for when we get to Q&A. But let's shift then from kind of the intro, Steve, and how you found your way and sort of some really meaningful park experience here in our parks to really these first 3 months with the fund and just sort of what you've tackled in these first 3 months from the fund's perspective, wins that you'd like to share, things that you've seen, challenges ahead, opportunities, just sort of give us, maybe walk us through these first 3 months.
Sure. I mean, number one, I've got to say the thing that's most fun is taking the funds that people have given to us throughout the year and writing checks to our three national parks. So we're right in that
Hmm.
process now. We sent Mount Rainier a check, I think, early last week, Olympic a check early this week, and hopefully North Cascades a check next week. So we sent about $1.3 million to the three parks for a myriad of kind of what we call annual projects. So projects that
Wow.
they're going to implement this year. Um, I'll share one project maybe from each park. So the first would be Mount Rainier. And so a program that I sort of became more aware of recently, just even before I joined the fund, just by hiking up at Skyline above Paradise. And I think the program that I'll mention there is Meadow Rovers. So there's a group of basically volunteer park ambassadors who spend their time up in the Paradise area, really engaging with and educating visitors, sort of helping answer questions, give folks directions, help people to steward just an amazing area that gets a lot of traffic, a lot of people traffic. And so that's one program that we support that really wouldn't happen without WNPF donors. And I just love the stories of the Meadow Rovers engaging with kids, helping
Hmm.
them to think about how to be good stewards of this place. Next, I'll say bear education. So that photo on the right is a bear education trailer up at North Cascades. And I think, having access to these places, I think of as a privilege. We want our national parks to be accessible to everybody. But when we go there, I think there's often education that needs to happen. I think a lot of people, just like me, my first summer in North Cascades, had never come across a bear. And so we want those interactions to be positive. And so the Bear Education Program really teaches people how to be good stewards, how to sort of prepare so that they have a positive impact on nature and don't have negative impacts or interactions with the bears. And then finally, the Scientist in Parks interns program at Olympic. And I think the lower left photos are of the scientists in parks. And I will say we have a great video. It's like a 3-minute video that just came out sharing that program. But that's basically an opportunity for young adults, often college students, to have a summer internship in Olympic National Park, to really learn about the park, support science in the park, but also to engage in the public. And I'll say the thing that I love about young adults in parks is it's such just a pivotal time in life, right? We're all trying to figure out what we want to do. And one experience in a national park, one internship can literally change the pathway of somebody's
Hmm.
life. And I know the first time I stepped in North Cascades National Park, I kind of shared my high school experience. And the three park staff that I was meeting with all had a similar experience in high school or college. And I think that science internship program is just an amazing way to sort of support science in the parks, help people launch their careers in the parks, and then also engage with the public. And I think that age of, kind of young adults really inspires kids to see what they can do and
Hmm.
what they can become. I think for folks who are middle-aged like me, it makes me feel a little bit younger and a little bit more energized each time
Hmm.
I work with young adults and learn from young adults. And I know for folks like my mom, who's 85, I think interacting with folks like science interns just really inspires them about our future and all that young people bring to our parks.
Amazing. Agree 1,000%. Thank you for that, Steve. Not a question, but a comment that I think is worth calling out some gratitude from Michael Mach. I hope I'm getting your last name pronounced correctly, Michael. Thanks for supporting the Meadow Rover program. Such a valuable program and so many amazing stories and the great work that they do. It's something we love to support for sure. On to the next question, Steve. What excites you most about the current state of our parks and the opportunities they provide for the community?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I've dedicated my career to connecting people with nature, and I've been
Hmm.
fortunate to travel all over the world. And I think that has helped me to see like just how amazingly lucky we all are to live in a state where we have access to three incredible national parks. Um,
Absolutely.
and I think for me, it's, the idea that our parks are relatively accessible, whether that's, getting there by car, or there was an earlier photo of Mount Rainier, um, just kind of a peekaboo view outside of her bedroom at sunrise. And it just, I think knowing that the parks are so close, even if I don't get there quite as often as I want to, just simply makes me happier, and really inspires me to do the work that we do each day, to be able to get up in the morning and see that place. And I think at a time where there's so much division in the world, parks are kind
Hmm.
of our commons. Like, I think anywhere you go in a park, you see people from all backgrounds, all perspectives, just really enjoying nature together. And I think we've all had that experience where we're in a park and we just see something that's astounding, whether it's, a bear from not too far away, hopefully not too close, a sunrise, a sunset, or just some incredible experience that we all share. So I think parks are a way to bond people across difference. Um,
Hmm.
and then I'll say, in terms of, the state of the parks, I'm just astounded by the incredible staff at our national parks, whether it's the superintendents or the trail crew. I mean, we're just super lucky to have a group of talented people working to make our parks accessible, working really to keep parks clean, safe, and open, maintaining hundreds of miles of trails at each park. And then making those parks accessible through the programs that WNPF often supports.
I love so much, and I'm thinking of all these swirling ideas around just this idea of our common place and this place that we come together in a world that's so busy and chaotic and crazy in so many different ways, but yet this place that we all come together. I really love that idea. That's a beautiful, beautiful picture. Um, Talking about specific projects for the park and specifically things that WNPF might be working on. Could you share anything around sort of some projects that you're specifically excited about in 2025 and the year ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some of the projects that I mentioned that are kind of annual projects that happen in the parks, but we also have a campaign for the parks going on, where we're working to raise $20 million over 5 years. So
Mm,
that's both to support annual projects like Meadow Rovers and the scientist interns, but we're also working to support large special park projects in each of the parks. So I think the coming slides share a little bit about those. So the first is restoring paradise. So we all know that, I think many of us, when we have a visitor or friend come into town, we often take people to visit paradise. It's kind of the first place, the most iconic place, for a lot of folks living around Puget Sound, on the eastern side of Puget Sound. And paradise both gets an enormous percentage of the visitors to our national parks, but also needs a lot of love and care. It's a high country site. So the work that we're doing up at Paradise is raising funds to support. First, in the background, you can see that it's probably 100-year-old slate restroom facility
mhm,
that's open throughout the year at Mount Rainier. So really, giving that facility the love and care that it needs to last the next 100 years. Um,
mhm,
Next, if you look at the lower left, we all know that the meadows have a huge impact from people. They're both a place of inspiration, but they're also impacted by people. So I know, that the park plants about 40 or 50,000 plants each year. They do amazing work to steward those meadows, but we need to do better. So we're supporting a science and restoration program, working with the University of Washington and the National Park to really understand the best practices in restoration. So how do we install plants that have the greatest chance of thriving and surviving in a really harsh climate with a lot of visitors? How do we install plants that are adaptive to climate change? And then finally, I'll say trails. So part of restoring paradise is investing in improvements to the Skyline Divide Trail, and then also
Hmm.
building a trail to connect the lower uh, parking lot to the Paradise Visitor Center. So right now, a lot of folks end up walking along the road, which is neither safe for walkers or drivers. So getting folks off the road. So those are three big projects, part of restoring paradise at Mount Rainier. And then the next slide um, is of Hurricane Ridge. So I'm
Hmm.
sure folks on this call know that in 2023, there was a fire that burnt down the historic visitor center at Hurricane Ridge. So rebuilding that visitor center is a huge priority for Olympic National Park. And I think where the Washington's National Park Fund comes in is a couple places. When that first burnt down, I think getting money so that the park could get webcams and people could see conditions up at the ridge to plan their visit, providing some funds for portables as the park prepares to build a new facility. Um, Hopefully, sometime this year, the park will launch public engagement. So, really going out into the community and hearing what people want that new visitor center to look like. So, WNPF will support that public engagement when it happens, and definitely look to the park on timing of that public engagement and where it will take place. And then finally, when the new visitor center is built, donor support, WNPF donor support will really enhance the visitor center. So kind of taking it from a good experience to a great experience, because there's often restrictions on how federal dollars can be spent, and our dollars provide that flexibility to really take that visitor center from good to great. And then lastly, at North Cascades on the next slide, um, not just a problem for North Cascades, but across the country, and one that really surprised me coming in here as somebody who lives in the city. But housing for park employees is a huge challenge, and North Cascades identified staff housing as their number one priority. So the challenge there is no matter how you want to enjoy a park, whether it's folks conducting the maintenance, building trail, doing science in the parks, that depends on great staff. And that North Cascades has a huge challenge in recruiting and retaining staff because of the lack of housing and the lack of affordable housing. So, really excited to start meeting with our donors and raising funds for those projects.
I love that. I love that so much. And of course, I've got my own sort of, the slate bathrooms at Paradise are special, near and dear to my heart. So I'm so excited to see the next iteration of those. And we talked a lot about WNPF's relationship to park staff, superintendents, kind of what's going on within the parks. If we look outside of the parks for a second, in the way, maybe walk us through some ways that WNPF collaborates with the communities, with stakeholders to achieve these goals that are obviously focused within the parks.
Absolutely. So I'd say number one, we're always working to support the priorities of the parks, right?
Yeah.
The superintendents and their staff know best what needs to happen. And I know they're always stretched for resources. And so I think where we can add value is just really doing outreach in the public. So being at events, tabling, having events where we can introduce people not only to WNPF, but to the parks, and then providing funding to the parks, whether it's outreach for the to be rebuilt Hurricane Ridge Visitor Center to get public input, or supporting youth programming. So out at Olympic, we support programming where Olympic National Park is able to go out into local Ys and Boys and Girls Clubs to get kids from local communities who wouldn't have the opportunity to get into Olympic, even though it's so close, to really experience the park. So I think that's our job in many ways, is providing that funding to make those experiences possible. At Mount Rainier, it's supporting groups like Northwest Youth Corps and Washington Trails Association to engage the broader community in the stewardship of our parks.
I love that. I love that. And one thing I was just thinking, sorry, is that, Steve, when I have opportunities to hear you speak about these things, it makes me realize a couple of things. Number one, um, I love, love, love how our parks, these parks, are core to who you are, and near and dear to you, and have been for essentially your entire life. And secondly, that I feel with the depth of understanding and knowledge and care that you have for all of these things, it's really not like you've been here 3 months. It feels like you've been here much longer. And you've got a year worth of thoughts and thinking in 3 months' time, and I love it and I get lost in it. Um, what advice, I guess, would you offer someone, who might be on this call, who's thinking, "Gosh, I'd love to get involved in supporting or advocating for the national parks, and in partnering, or what can I do? How can I get involved?"
Yeah, I mean, I would say the first thing for all of us is just enjoy the parks, and obviously enjoy the parks responsibly. I think that
Mm,
for so many of us, we either move here or we stay here because of our love for the park. So, one is enjoy these spaces responsibly, spend time in nature, right? It doesn't always have to be at Mount Rainier. We have an amazing state. So, get out to the mountains, enjoy our three parks, but also enjoy nature close to home, and then share those experiences and inspiration with others, especially folks who might not feel like parks are their place. So really get people out there. We're Washington's National Park Fund, so I would say donate. You can go to our website WNPF.org and click on donate. You can get a Washington's National Park Fund license plate to show your support for the parks and help raise some funds for WNPF. Attend one of our events, whether it's Pints for the Parks or another
mm,
event. Visit us to get involved. And then I would say, like, pick your one thing, right? So we always want to lead with supporting the parks and the priorities that they've identified. But really, I think there's a value to sort of deciding one way that you want to make a difference in the world. So if it's one way that you want to support our parks, and I think over time, whether that's volunteering, donating, introducing people to the parks, sharing the priorities of the park so other people know where the funding needs are and other people are inspired to support the parks. Do that one thing over and over again, year
mm.
after year, and I think it just amplifies the difference that you make over a lifetime.
I love that. Thank you, Steve. Well, that ends the questions that we had sort of teed up, in the sense of what we wanted to walk through, and this now opens it up to all you folks who have decided to spend this time with us, to start thinking about your questions. So there is a box at the bottom of the little Zoom window that says Q&A. If you've got a question, something that you'd like to throw in there, I see one from Teresa. Thank you, Teresa, or maybe a couple from Teresa. Thank you, Teresa. But as you're thinking of your questions, feel free to throw those into the Q&A box, and we'll spend, the next 10-15 minutes walking through those questions, and opening up that channel, and then we'll look to wrap up sharply at 12:45, if not a little before, depending on how we're going. I see another question in there, or coming. Thank you, Nicolette. But let's start with Teresa's. She has a serious question and a fun question. So the serious question: the projects highlighted sound great, but I wanted to learn about the past and future projects WNPF is supporting. Where and how would I do that?
Yeah, so I would say go to our website. I'm not going to do a great job of navigating you to the right spot that will show you past projects, but there are many projects listed on our website. And then I would say for the future, we're just getting ready. Sign up for our newsletter. I think that's a great way to get the latest news from our parks. So we've just gotten the next round of projects that we'll be fundraising for from our three parks. So we'll definitely share those out through our newsletters, through social media. So follow us there. And then I would say, those top three special projects for the parks are really huge in terms of where we go next. So Restoring Paradise, Hurricane Ridge Visitor Center, and North Cascades housing. And I think those are projects, obviously the day to day and year to year visitor
Mhm.
engagement is critical, but I think the parks have each identified those projects as projects that are going to have impact over the coming decades.
Awesome, and thank you for sharing
Okay.
that page, Casey. That's
Yeah.
great. So now for the fun question from Teresa. Steve, what is your favorite animal to see in Washington's national parks? Where and why?
Good question. I mean, it's probably one of those answers like, which is my favorite kid, right? It changes over time. But I would say I love sea otters. So just being on the Olympic coast and watching otters play is just spectacular. I think they just bring so much energy and joy, such sort of curiosity to the world. So yeah, I would say that would be my favorite. And in terms of favorite memories, there was a photo of me with my two kids having dinner on the coast by Lake Ozette in the Olympics.
Mm,
And that's a place that I went backpacking a few times with my kids, um, and just loved introducing them to nature. And I think
mhm,
wildlife is just such an amazing way to introduce people to nature, right? And it's often what you haven't seen. So I can
yeah.
remember going out to the Olympic coast with friends from New York, and my children were absolutely inspired to see a deer crossing the trail because they had never seen a deer. And my friends' kids from New York see deer in their backyard all the time. So they just kind of walked
Mhm.
by the deer and didn't look twice. But I think finding those, sort of wildlife that you've never seen before is just magical.
100% agree completely. Also want to call out the WNPF.org website, specifically slash projects. So WNPF.org slash projects. Anytime any of you are looking to just sort of find out more, dig in deeper to the information, the kind of projects that we're working on, but also just in general, curious about the organization, what we're doing, upcoming events, anything. It's a wealth of information and constantly updated. So it's a great place to check out. Is our website. We have another question from Nicolette. Thank you, Nicolette. Steve, did you grow up in an outdoorsy family, or was your high school experience in North Cascades your first opportunity?
Sure. Thanks, Nicolette. I did not grow up in an outdoorsy family. Both my parents were born in New York City. One of my grandparents thought that I lived about an hour and a half north of New York City, and they thought, as my perspective as a kid was that the world was flat and we lived at the end of the world. So that was as far as from the city as they ever wanted to get. So I think for me, it was really just playing in my backyard, and right, that was home. So that's what
Hmm.
connected me to nature. But I didn't have those experiences to go backpacking. I don't think either of my parents ever had that experience. And so that experience in the North Cascades was both something that I desperately wanted to do, but also something that was really foreign. And clearly, that one experience as a young person in the outdoors inspired my career, and inspired so much of my life. And now I've connected my kids. And I think with
Hmm.
WNPF, I love how with donor support, we're connecting other kids to nature and really making it more accessible for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Nicolette. And others, if you have questions or things you'd love to ask Steve and use this time to dig deeper into something he shared or maybe a new topic, definitely throw those in the little Q&A place. But hey, again, we might wrap up a little early, and I don't know about you and your day, but I always love a little time back. So if we do, that's totally fine too. Greg's got a question or a comment just in. Greg says, it's no secret that the parks have been underfunded for decades. Is a part of WNPF's mission to also work to advocate more money from Congress to support the parks? Or what are some of the more effective things we can do as citizens, particularly with the possibility of further reductions from all departments with the new incoming administration? Great question, Greg.
Sure. So historically, our mission has not been advocacy, and I think there's a strength to being part of the environmental movement and not taking part in that overt advocacy. I mean, we're certainly here to raise awareness of the issues and the importance um, of funding our parks adequately. But that has not been a core focus. I think if the parks ask us to have conversations and really do more education and introducing people to these magical places, we are there with them. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's well known that parks don't have enough funding. I think one opportunity coming into the new administration is just working with the parks to figure out how we can help get stuff done. So, I don't expect there'll be enough funding for parks, but are there policies that present a barrier um, that could be changed in a way that help things to happen easier? So thinking of housing in the North Cascades, um, if building a house is complex, building a house with in all the confines of the federal government is incredibly complex. So seeing, are there ways as we look for housing to support North Cascades where we can work within those policies to make the barrier to creating housing for the parks lower than it currently is?
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thanks for that answer. Sorry for that question. And thank you, Steve. From Karen Povey, what's the best way to make a gift to the campaign you mentioned?
Absolutely, Karen, great question. And thank you for making a gift to the campaign. I would say reach out to any of us at WNPF. So that's you can email me, steve@wnpf.org. Happy to talk. And I think it's important to get donations of all sizes, whether somebody wants to make a small gift to an annual project, a larger gift to the campaign, or make WNPF part of your planned giving, so part of your will. We're
Mhm.
happy to talk about that with folks individually.
Thank you for that, Karen. Nicolette has another question. Thank you, Nicolette. What is the time frame? This is a popular question. What is the time frame for rebuilding the Day Lodge at Hurricane Ridge?
So the short answer is I probably can't say, and I don't really know what the timeline is. I
Yeah.
know that we're actually scheduled to talk to Olympic National Park late next week to find out a little bit more information, and are really optimistic that we'll have information to share with our supporters this spring. I think the first step for the park is to secure federal funding. The next step is to do community engagement and find out what people want. And then obviously coming up with a plan to build a new facility
Mhm.
in an alpine environment that has a short construction season. So we'll get that information to you soon.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Top of mind for a lot of folks. From Alona, can you talk about fireside circles?
Sure. And Tony, do you want to take that one and I can add
I,
to
you
it?
know, I love fireside circles. Again, plug for the website in the sense of looking for what's upcoming, but on a very regular basis, we have these fireside circles. And what's lovely about them is we really try to move them around so that they're in different communities around, up and down kind of the Puget Sound area and around the parks. So we'll do fireside circles over and around Olympic or up around North Cascades, certainly close to Rainier or some central things to Seattle. We move it around so that we can tap into different groups of people. It's a lovely, pretty, I will say pretty informal moment of people coming together to share their love for the parks. There's usually food, there's usually content. That content often provided by park staff, park superintendents, deputy superintendents, always WNPF staffers, WNPF board members there. And what I've loved most about them is those connection points, is that we get opportunities to see familiar faces. Because we move it around, we get opportunities to see a lot of new faces, open up new conversations. And because the content is always focused on what's going on within the parks, what are some new things going on, what are upcoming challenges or opportunities, where are places you can get involved, very similar to, I think, this conversation, it really sparks new energy, and those new connections then kind of take on a life of their own moving forward and follow up, and the role that people can play getting involved with volunteer opportunities or donating or whatever it might be. So definitely WNPF.org/events to kind of see which ones are upcoming. Again, whether if it's not, if the next one isn't convenient for you, just wait, because one's gonna happen that's going to be closer to you, and that's by design. So a lovely opportunity to plug in and just see what's going on and jump into the community.
Thanks, Tony, for taking that one
Yeah.
on.
Well, yeah. Well, happy to. Happy to. So if other questions come up, feel free to throw them in the chat. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. But if something comes up, don't think it's too late. We can still get to it. I'm going to wrap up just by, first and foremost, of course, saying thank you. Thank you for grabbing this time in the middle of your Thursday to join us for this virtual field trip. Certainly, thank you to Steve, for taking the time, and just love to hear about your passion, the thought, the plans, the connections, all the things that you shared. It's so meaningful and all focused on the parks, something that we love so much. We have a ton of these kinds of events coming up for 2025. So again, WNPF.org/events to take a look at what's coming up. Lots of different things. A lot of the things Steve mentioned, the fireside circles, other virtual field trips. Speaking of that, the next virtual field trip is to highlight a WNPF funded project in the North Cascades, Stephen Mather Wilderness. Andrew Giacomelli will discuss a wilderness mapping tool that he developed that helps map the character of the areas in the park that are more difficult to get access to. Very interesting. Many wilderness areas in the United States are beginning to use this tool, and we're excited to learn about everything about that tool, more about it. Sign up for that virtual field trip at WNPF.org events. So definitely take a look at that and get that on your calendar. And then if you see other episodes of virtual field trips, you can also find us on YouTube by searching Washington's National Park Fund if you want to take a look at the ones we've done where we've had virtual field trips with the superintendents of the parks or other folks where we get a chance to have a brief chat and ask questions. It's a wealth of information, especially if you have interest in a specific park, or if you want to find out more, you want to hear from Sula Jacobs about what her thoughts are on Hurricane Ridge, for instance, and what's going on there. You can take a look at that past virtual field trip by looking at the YouTube channel. So with that and no other questions that I see, Steve, again, a thank you to you for not just today, but all you're doing for this organization and for our parks. And I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, everyone. Take care.